2:40 in the morning, deep beneath the streets of Tel Aviv. The service tunnel smells like copper and wet concrete. Eli Raviv knows this smell, knows every sound, every hum, every electrical whisper in the darkness. 18 years maintaining the city's telecommunications backbone. 18 years listening to the network breathe. But tonight, something is different. He's alone in Sector 7, a junction box near Jaffa. His headlamp cuts a narrow beam through the black. He's been chasing a problem for 3 days now. Packet loss on a fiber trunk, routine diagnostics, standard maintenance, and then he hears it. Not mechanical, not random interference. This is something else entirely. A pulse, rhythmic, deliberate, structured. He stops moving, holds his breath, listens. Short, long, short, short, long, silence. Then again, the same pattern, riding the carrier signal, barely audible beneath the static, like someone whispering inside the wire itself. Eli's heart kicks into overdrive. In his line of work, unauthorized signals mean one thing. Someone is hijacking the network. His hands shake as he pulls out his tablet, connects to the diagnostic interface, starts a trace. The signal is coming from an unauthorized node, a phantom injection, piggybacking on legitimate traffic, masked by background noise. Someone is transmitting data through Israel's secure telecom infrastructure, and they're doing it with enough sophistication that every automated security system in the country never flagged it. Not once. Eli stares at his screen. He knows protocol. He should call this in immediately, right now, this second, but something keeps him working. Curiosity? Or maybe instinct? 18 years underground. You develop a sixth sense for these things. He isolates the frequency, records a sample, follows the signal path backward through the infrastructure map. The source is close, less than 2 kilometers, a residential building in a mixed neighborhood. Jewish, Arab, foreign workers, the kind of place where nobody asks questions and everyone minds their business. Eli sits back against the concrete wall. His breath comes out in visible clouds. He's holding evidence, a covert transmission, origin unknown, purpose unknown. And if this is what he thinks it is, if someone is running an intelligence operation through civilian infrastructure, then the people on the other end are not amateurs. They're professionals. Professionals who just bypassed millions of dollars in security architecture. And if they discover that a maintenance worker stumbled onto their hidden channel, Eli Raviv might not make it home for breakfast. To understand what Eli just found, you need to understand something fundamental about modern warfare. Israel and Hamas have been locked in a shadow war for decades. Not just rockets and raids, something quieter, something far more insidious. Intelligence networks, sleeper operatives, communications infrastructure turned into weapons, where information is the ammunition and the casualties are invisible until it's too late. Hamas can't operate like a traditional military. It's impossible. So instead, they embed operatives deep inside Israel, people who live completely normal lives, hold regular jobs, raise families, pay taxes, complain about traffic, and wait. Some gather intelligence, others coordinate logistics for attacks. A few are activators, handlers who wake up sleeper cells when the moment comes. But there's a critical problem. Communication. Every single call, every message, every digital transaction inside Israel passes through networks monitored by Shin Bet, Unit 8200, and layers upon layers of automated surveillance designed to catch patterns before they become operations. One suspicious phone call can trigger an investigation. An encrypted messaging app can mark you for monitoring. Even face-to-face meetings leave trails. CCTV cameras, license plates, movement, patterns analyzed by artificial intelligence. So operatives get creative. Dead drops, coded newspaper advertisements, burner phones activated once and thrown away. And occasionally, they find a gap in the infrastructure itself. A technical vulnerability where surveillance is weakest. That's what Eli found. A covert transmission method so subtle it didn't trigger a single alarm in 3 years of continuous operation. 3 years. Shin Bet would later reconstruct how it worked. The operative had modified a standard residential internet modem to inject low-frequency data bursts into the telecom carrier signal during off-peak hours. The transmissions were short, compressed, masked by ambient network noise. To automated systems, they looked like random interference, minor glitches, nothing worth investigating. But to someone listening closely, like a lineman with 18 years of experience, they were unmistakably artificial. The data itself was encrypted and routed through multiple proxy layers before reaching Hamas servers in Gaza. By the time Shin Bet traced the full network, they discovered something chilling. This wasn't just one operative. It was a node in a larger communications web, connecting multiple assets across Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, a network that had been operating undetected for 3 years. But all of that comes later. Right now, in the early hours of a cold November morning, Eli Raviv is making the most important decision of his life. He pulls out his phone, opens his contacts, finds the number for his supervisor. Then he hesitates. If he reports this and he's wrong, if it's just a technical glitch or some hacker running a pirate radio stream, he'll look paranoid. Worse, he'll draw attention to himself. In a city where being too curious can make you a target, if he reports this and he's right, he's about to set off a chain reaction that will end with armed raids, interrogations, maybe bodies, people he might have passed on, the street, families living in the same neighborhood where his daughter goes to school. Eli closes his eyes, takes a breath, and makes the call. Within 40 minutes, 3 Shin Bet agents are standing in the tunnel with him, reviewing his recording, running their own diagnostics. One of them, a woman in her 30s with the tired eyes of someone who hasn't slept in days, looks at Eli and says quietly, "You just found something we've been hunting for 8 months. Do not tell anyone about this. Not your wife, not your supervisor, no one. The hunt has begun." Shin Bet doesn't rush in. That's the first rule of counterintelligence. When you find an enemy asset, you don't kill it immediately. You watch it. You learn from it. You follow the threads until you understand the entire network. The operation is assigned to a small team, 6 officers, all veterans of deep cover work. Their job is simple in theory, brutal in execution. Identify the operative, map their contacts, and dismantle the network without tipping anyone off. They start with the signal. Using Eli's trace data, they pinpoint the source to a 4th-floor apartment in a modest residential building. The unit is registered to a man named Khalil Mansour, 38 years old, a logistics coordinator for a shipping company. On paper, he's unremarkable. No criminal record, no known affiliations, no red flags in any database. That's exactly what makes him dangerous. Shin Bet pulls his full profile, employment history, financial records, travel patterns, family connections, social media activity. Everything looks clean, too clean. Khalil pays his bills on time. He doesn't travel abroad. He doesn't attend political rallies or post inflammatory content online. He is, by every visible measure, invisible. But there are micro-patterns, small deviations that only become visible when you're looking for them. Khalil works late 3 nights a week, always the same nights, always returning home, between 1 and 3 in the morning. On those nights, his internet usage spikes briefly, then drops to 0. He has no hobbies that require internet access during those hours. No streaming, no gaming, no browsing, which means he's transmitting. Shin Bet makes the decision to place him under full surveillance. Physical tails, phone taps, apartment bugs, keystroke loggers on his devices. They move carefully, using contractors and false pretexts to install the equipment while Khalil is at work. Every step is designed to be invisible, and then they wait. Surveillance work is 90% boredom and 10% terror. Agents sit in unmarked vans, rotate shifts, log every movement, every visitor, every deviation from routine. Khalil goes to work. He buys groceries. He visits his mother on Fridays. He does nothing suspicious for 3 weeks. But on week 4, something changes. Khalil receives a visitor, a man in his early 20s, dressed casually, carrying a backpack. He stays for 17 minutes. The conversation inside the apartment is recorded, but it's mundane. Small talk, tea, a brief discussion about car repairs. Nothing incriminating, except for one detail. The younger man never gives his name. And when he leaves, he walks 4 blocks, doubles back through an alley, and switches his jacket before boarding a bus. Classic counter-surveillance. Shin Bet now has 2 targets. The younger man is tracked to a university dormitory. His name is Youssef, 22 years old, a computer science student with no obvious ties to militant groups. But his digital footprint reveals something critical. He's been accessing dark web forums, researching encryption protocols, and communicating with accounts linked to Hamas cyber operations. The network is expanding. Khalil isn't just a transmitter, he's a handler. Youssef isn't just a student, he's a tech asset, possibly building tools for other operatives. Shin Bet now faces a choice. They can arrest both men immediately, secure convictions, dismantle this cell, or they can wait, let the network grow, and try to identify everyone involved. They choose to wait, because somewhere in this web is the person who recruited Khalil, the person who trained Youssef, the coordinator who's running operations across multiple cities, the spider at the center of the web. But waiting is dangerous. Every day the network operates is another day it could be activated. Another day a sleeper cell could receive orders to strike. And then, on a rainy Thursday evening in December, everything accelerates. Khalil starts to move differently, faster, more erratic. On December 12th, he takes a half day off work, something he never does. He drives to Jerusalem, parks near the Old City, and meets with a third individual, an older man, late 50s, wearing a traditional keffiyeh and wire-rimmed glasses. They sit in a cafe for 40 minutes. The conversation is in Arabic, low and careful. Shin Bet's field team records everything, but the dialect is regional, coded phrases mixed with everyday language. Later, analysis reveals the true content. Khalil is reporting that he's detected anomalies in the network, packet loss, timing inconsistencies. Someone has been inside the system. He doesn't know about Eli. He doesn't know about the surveillance, but he suspects, and that suspicion is enough to make him dangerous. The older man, later identified as Ibrahim al-Rantisi, a known Hamas liaison with a decade of operational history, gives Khalil instructions. Shut down the transmission node. Wipe the equipment. Go dark for 6 months. Youssef is to be cut off completely. The network is to be frozen. This is the nightmare scenario for Shin Bet. If Khalil follows orders, the investigation dies. The network vanishes. Months of work collapse into nothing. The team leader makes the call. They have 48 hours to gather enough evidence for arrests, or they move in anyway. Agents intensify surveillance. They intercept Khalil's phone, clone his devices, monitor every keystroke. They track Ibrahim back to a safe house in Ramallah. They build a target package on Youssef, his contacts, his online activity, his meeting locations. But there's a problem. Khalil isn't just erasing the transmission setup. He's running a counter-investigation of his own. On December 14th, Khalil drives through Tel Aviv on a seemingly random route. Except it's not random. He's testing for tails. He takes sudden turns, stops abruptly, backtracks through one-way streets. Shin Bet's surveillance team has to rotate vehicles constantly, stay loose, risk losing him to avoid exposure. And then Khalil does something unexpected. He pulls into a parking garage, leaves his car, and walks into a shopping mall. He buys nothing. He doesn't use his phone. He just walks, slowly, methodically, watching reflections in store windows, checking for anyone mirroring his movements. He's a professional, not just an operative, someone with formal training in counter-surveillance. The Shin Bet team splits up, uses plainclothes officers, blends into the crowd, but Khalil is good, too good. He exits through a service corridor, catches a taxi, and disappears into afternoon traffic. For 6 hours, they lose him. When they pick up the trail again, Khalil is back at his apartment, but something has changed. He's packing 2 suitcases, methodically loaded with clothes, documents, and cash. He's preparing to run. Shin Bet can't wait any longer. If Khalil flees, the entire network evaporates. Ibrahim will alert other cells. Youssef will scrub his digital trail. Years of embedded operations will be lost. The order comes down from command. Move in tonight. At 11:47 p.m., tactical teams position around the building. Snipers take overwatch positions on adjacent rooftops. Entry teams stage in stairwells. A warrant is signed by a military judge. The operation is green-lit. At 11:58 p.m., Khalil's apartment lights are still on. Through a window, agents can see him sitting at his laptop, typing rapidly. He's not packing anymore. He's sending a message. If that message goes out, it could warn the entire network. Hamas operatives across Israel could scatter, destroy evidence, or worse, activate pre-planned attacks as a last resort. The entry team doesn't wait for midnight. At 11:59, they breach the door with a battering ram, flood the apartment with flashbangs, and tackle Khalil before he can hit send. The laptop is seized mid-keystroke. The message is incomplete, unsent, but visible on the screen. A warning in Arabic addressed to multiple encrypted accounts. The subject line reads, "They are inside." Khalil is face down on the floor, hands zip-tied, silent. He doesn't resist, doesn't shout. He just looks at the agents with the flat, calm expression of someone who knew this moment was coming. Within the hour, coordinated raids hit Yusef's dorm and Ibrahim's safe house. Yusef is arrested without incident. He's still awake, coding on his laptop, unaware that his handler has been compromised. Ibrahim tries to run, makes it 3 blocks before a plainclothes team intercepts him near a bus stop. By sunrise, 12 operatives are in custody. Forensic teams are pulling apart encrypted drives, tracing communication logs, reconstructing 3 years of covert operations. The network is dead. But the story isn't over. Khalil Mansour doesn't talk at first. He sits in the interrogation room at Shin Bet headquarters, hands folded, eyes distant. He knows the routine. He knows Israeli interrogators are trained to wait, to build pressure, to exploit fear and exhaustion. But Khalil isn't afraid. He's calculating. The lead interrogator, a woman named Maya, mid-40s, 20 years in counterintelligence, doesn't start with accusations. She starts with facts. She lays out the evidence, piece by piece. The signal intercepts, the surveillance logs, the unfinished message, the network map showing connections to Hamas command structures in Gaza. Khalil listens, says nothing. Maya shifts tactics. She talks about Eli Raviv, the lineman who found the signal. She describes him, a father of 2, a man who spent 18 years maintaining the infrastructure that keeps the city running. She tells Khalil that Eli was scared when he made the call, that he almost didn't, that he wrestled with the decision because he didn't want to be responsible for ruining lives. But he did it anyway, Maya says, because he knew that signal wasn't just data. It was part of something that could get people killed. Khalil's expression doesn't change, but his hands tighten slightly on the table. Maya leans forward. "You're not a monster, Khalil. I've read your file. You grew up in Jaffa. You watched your neighborhood change. You saw your friends profiled, searched, humiliated. I understand why you hate us. But the people you're working for, Hamas, they don't care about you. You're a tool, and the moment you stopped being useful, they told you to disappear." She slides a photograph across the table. It's Ibrahim, in custody, face bruised from resisting arrest. He ran. He left you behind. Yusef too. You were the one who stayed, the one who took the risk, and they abandoned you the second things got complicated. Khalil looks at the photo, then at Maya, and for the first time, he speaks. "You think I did this for them?" His voice is quiet, controlled. "I did it because I had to, because I watched my cousin die at a checkpoint when I was 16, because I've been searched more times than I can count, just for looking like I do, because this country treats people like me as suspects first and citizens second." Maya doesn't interrupt. She lets him talk. "I'm not stupid," Khalil continues. "I knew what I was doing. I knew the risks. And I knew that one day, someone like you would sit across from me and try to make me feel guilty. But I don't. Because everything I did with my eyes open." Maya nods slowly. "Then you won't mind telling me who recruited you?" Khalil smiles. "Just barely. Go to hell." The interrogation lasts 3 more hours. Khalil gives up nothing. But it doesn't matter. The forensic evidence is overwhelming. Chat logs, financial transfers, meeting records. Yusef, under separate interrogation, breaks after 2 days and confirms the network structure. Ibrahim, facing decades in prison, negotiates a reduced sentence in exchange for identifying other cells. Khalil is charged with espionage, aiding a terrorist organization, conspiracy to commit acts of violence. He receives 18 years. Yusef gets 12. Ibrahim, because of his cooperation, gets 9. The network is dismantled. The communication channel is shut down. Shin Bet identifies 7 additional operatives across Israel. Some are arrested. Others are flipped and turned into double agents, feeding false information back to Hamas. The operation is classified for 2 years. When details finally leak to the press, the story focuses on the high-tech surveillance and the raids. Eli Raviv's name is never mentioned. He goes back to work, fixing lines, running diagnostics, listening to the hum of the network, but he never forgets that sound, the rhythm in the wire. The moment he realized that the infrastructure he'd spent his life maintaining had been turned into a weapon. The Khalil Mansour case is taught now in intelligence academies, not as a success story, but as a case study in complexity. On the surface, it's a clean win. A covert network discovered, dismantled, prosecuted. Attacks were prevented. Lives were saved. The operation exposed vulnerabilities in Israel's telecom infrastructure that have since been hardened against similar exploits. But dig deeper, and the questions get harder. Khalil wasn't wrong about everything. He grew up in a system that profiled him, questioned him, treated him with suspicion because of his ethnicity. He saw friends humiliated at checkpoints. He watched his neighborhood squeezed by policies he had no vote in changing. His radicalization wasn't random. It was a response to lived experience. Does that justify espionage? Of course not. Does it explain it? Absolutely. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Khalil's recruitment was predictable. Hamas has been exploiting these grievances for decades, turning resentment into ideology, and ideology into action. Israel knows this. Shin Bet has entire departments dedicated to understanding the psychology of radicalization, to identifying individuals at risk, to intervening before someone like Khalil crosses the line. But prevention is harder than prosecution. It requires trust, integration, and addressing the root conditions that make extremism appealing. And in a region where security and identity are inseparable, where history is written in blood, those conversations are almost impossible. Then there's Eli, the lineman who did everything right. He saw something wrong, reported it, cooperated fully with the investigation. But his life changed too. He was debriefed extensively, told to never speak about what he found, and monitored for months to ensure he wasn't a target for retaliation. His family never knew why he became quieter, more cautious, more watchful. There's no medal for Eli, no public recognition, just the knowledge that he made a choice, and it mattered. And the cost of that choice is something he carries alone. And then there's the network itself. 12 people arrested. But how many others are still out there? How many signals are still hidden in the noise, waiting for someone to listen closely enough? Shin Bet increased monitoring after the case. They brought in Eli as a consultant, unofficially, to train other linemen on what to listen for. They upgraded intrusion detection systems across Israel's telecom backbone. They ran counter-operations, spreading disinformation through compromised channels to confuse Hamas handlers. But intelligence work is never finished. Every network you dismantle is replaced by another, more careful, more sophisticated. Every operative you arrest is a lesson for the next one. This is the reality of covert warfare. There are no final victories, only cycles of discovery, disruption, and adaptation. So what's the lesson here? If you were Eli, standing in that tunnel, holding evidence of something dangerous, would you make the call, knowing that it might save lives, but also ruin them, knowing that you'd be dragged into a world you never asked to be part of? If you were Khalil, living under a system you believed was unjust, would you resist? And if so, where's the line between resistance and terrorism, between fighting for your people and becoming the weapon that kills them? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're the questions that define modern conflict, where the battlefield is invisible, where the enemy lives next door, and where the only certainty is that someone, somewhere, is listening. The Khalil Mansour operation ended the way most intelligence cases do, quietly, with paperwork and prosecutions and classified files that will stay sealed for decades. But it started with something simple. A maintenance worker who knew his job well enough to hear the difference between a glitch and a threat. In the world of covert operations, sometimes the most dangerous thing you can be is observant. 2:40 in the morning, a service tunnel beneath Tel Aviv, a technician with a headlamp, and a sound that shouldn't be there. That's how invisible wars begin. Not with explosions, but with whispers. Not with armies, but with wires. Not with declarations, but with silences that someone finally learns to hear. The rhythm in the darkness, the pulse in the network, the war that never sleeps, and the ordinary people who become extraordinary when they choose to pay attention.